I'm joined today with Mike Mraz, November 6th, Mike Zulu. Now, Mike is a big-time de-expeditioner, and he happened to be in town this week. He's one of the operators that we're all doing a multi-op here for CQ Worldwide Sideband, so I thought I'd interview him real quick. Now, Mike first got licensed at the age of 11, but he didn't start DXing until about 20 years later. And he's operated from about 25 DX entities, 13 of which were DXpeditions, and 7 of those won DXpedition of the Year. Welcome aboard, Mike.
Thanks, Val. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Now, I know you went to Ohio State.
Yes, I did.
And you were able to study under Dr. John Krause, Whiskey 8 Juliet Kilo, so who's best known for all his
call sign
for his antenna designs, right?
I think he started designing antennas when he was a kid.
So tell us about that. What was it like working under him?
Thanks to a friend of mine, Bob, who's now Kilo 7 Zulu Bravo, I became aware of an opportunity with Dr. Krause to work at the Radio Observatory at Ohio State. At the time, one of the largest radio telescopes in the world. And they were transitioning from an all-sky survey of quasars and objects such as that to searching for extraterrestrial signals.
SETI, I remember SETI.
It became SETI. This is very early in the SETI days. And Dr. Krause and company needed some signal processing equipment to break their 30 megahertz bandwidth up into smaller segments for the then state-of-the-art IBM 1130 computer to analyze the data. So I was fortunate to work with Dr. Krause and my friend Bob and designed a little detector. I think at the time we built 100 channels, and later it was expanded to I don't know, hundreds or maybe 1,000. Anyway.
To help detect signals?
Exactly. It was basically to narrow the bandwidth of the radio telescope, because if you're looking for a signal from another civilization, it would probably be CW. So we built the equipment, installed it in the telescope, and you know, I was busy graduating and going on to my career, and found out later that a signal came into the feed horn, and they had a protocol. It passed the protocol, and it looked like it was the first candidate in history for an extraterrestrial signal. And the researcher, Dr. Amon, the output of this detector was a printout. And he wrote "wow" in the margin of the printout that became known as the "wow" signal.
I've heard of the "wow" signals. Probably some of you guys have too. Well, that's very cool.
So for years and years, I was paranoid that it was a cold solder joint on one of the boards I had hand built.
But it's not.
No, and it never recurred, and so it's, who knows what it was. There's a lot of guesses, but
very nice.
What an experience.
Well, 13 DXpeditions, that's a lot of DXpeditions. And I know your first biggie, I'm going to put up here a list of all his DXpeditions, and if they have a gold star, that means they won DXpedition of the Year. But I know your second DXpedition, which was your first big one, Herd Island. How did you get on a big DXpedition so early in your DX?
That was interesting, because the team led by K0IR had attempted to activate Herd in 1995, and they paid a huge sum of money to a scam artist basically in Australia who said he had a ship, but he didn't.
Oh.
So they had to regroup and look for new transportation. And
did they get their money back?
No. No. So in the meantime, email went out on some DX reflector. We're short one operator for VK0IR. So I quickly replied and I said, well, I haven't done a DXpedition, but I've done a little contesting and blah, blah, blah. I never expected them to invite me, but they did. And it turned out to be a very life-changing experience, I would say.
Well, that's in a brutal part of the world, and I noticed some of your others, like Kerguelen. I mean, you did Scarborough Reef. I mean, that's a bunch of rocks just bubbling out of the ocean, is all that is, with some scaffolding.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have to tell us about that. I mean, when you get there, that's all it is rocks, and you guys create the scaffolding from scratch there?
Yes. So I think we pulled in at low tide, and there were thousands of rocks sticking out of the water at this reef. And then at high tide, there were 4 remaining.
Wow.
So we had a carpenter from Taiwan who was unbelievable. And within a day or two, he had platforms built completely on the rock so that there was no controversy about scaffolding in the water.
Have you had any close calls? I mean, Kerguelen, that was kind of an unruly part of the world. Any close calls have you had on all these expeditions you've been on?
Kerguelen and Heard are similar in weather, and except there's a human outpost on Kerguelen. There's nothing on Heard but penguins and seals and wind. But I guess the closest call would have been on Scarborough, because we usually went out right around sunset. We made the shift change around sunset and sunrise. So we were out there overnight, 12 hours. And James 9V1YC and I had gone out to operate on Rock 4, the big rock. And sometime 11, 12 in the evening, midnight local time, the waves started to kick up. I think the closest real landmass is Manila, Philippines, which is a whole day sail. So we're in the middle of nowhere, and the boat is a half mile away that way. And the waves get big, and one wave breaks over top of our little box that we had the rig sheltered in. So we're covered with salt water. The charger for the handheld went, and the handheld discharged. The wind got higher and the waves got higher. And one of the waves came up underneath the floor of the platform on which we were sitting, and the whole platform jumped. And at that point, I grabbed the 2 life vests and I handed one to James, who was operating CW. And I put mine on. I said, "Here, put this on. We're probably going swimming tonight." And in the meantime, I had watched the stars, and I knew which direction the boat was in if we couldn't see it and we had to swim. So we knew which way to swim. It would have, the water temperature was 85 or 86. So we weren't going hypothermic. But my biggest concern was if the platform, because it was, wire used for MIG welding, that lightweight aluminum MIG wire. That's how he wired the platforms to the rock to hold them. So if the wire let go, I was worried that we'd go over backwards and the amplifier would come onto my chest in the water. The waves subsided, and we spent the whole night out there, operated and had fun. And
which one out of all these expeditions do you think was your favorite one?
I'd say they all had what I look for in these trips, which I probably shouldn't say this in public, but it's not being on the radio. It's the camaraderie and, going to these weird places with old friends and the opportunity to make new friends. But just from sheer unbelievableness, it would have to be Heard Island. I think it's the closest you could experience another planet without leaving the Earth. I mean, it truly was another planet. It was so unusual and so beautiful and so brutal. And the weather is infamous. It changes.
Now, anything on the horizon coming on that you can tell us about?
I think I'm old and crotchety and nobody invites me anymore. No, Val, I don't have anything that I can talk about, unfortunately, but hopefully.
Well, thanks for joining us here today, Mike Mraz, N6 Mike Zulu.
Thanks.